the vernacular schools has been a luxury option for the parents as well. And I've seen, you see, the SJKC has been a big and popular option for the Malay parents. So I stand with the Education Act, and I stand with the decision and the position that we have no problem with the vernacular schools.
Hello everybody, it is 6:07 and just to let you all know what to expect, it is going to be a show of two halves today. So we have got Education Minister Fadhlina Sidek in the studio with us, very excited about that. But her schedule is very packed, so she's only able to join us until 6:45. So the plan is we will spend the first half of the show speaking to the Minister about her plans for the portfolio, the state of education in Malaysia. And then in the second half, we'll be opening up our phone lines to hear from you on suggestions you would like the ministry to take on. We'll be collecting all of that and sharing that with her office. So having said all that, in the meantime, Fadhlina, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here today.
So let's start off with your pathway to occupying this portfolio, because your background is in law.
Yeah.
Was education something you were passionate about even before taking on this ministry and frankly this challenge?
Of course, because I'm a mother of 6 children, and education has been a very important very important issues in the family. Both my parents are teachers or educators, so it's kind of big impact education has been in the family as well. So from lawyers to education minister has been a 360. It's really nothing beats that. From the first thing I entered politics, and then I won my constituency, and then became the minister. So in courts I can perceive, or I can actually predict if the case is going to win or I'm going to lose the case based on the facts and the evidence. But I can't afford to lose in education. So education must win by all means, or else the things that we don't want to see, the extremism, the radicalism, is going to overtake the education. So it's a big difference from legal to education. But so far so good. So
Can I ask just a follow-up question? Because you mentioned your parents as educators.
Yes.
Your father, was very famously led ABIM, and he was a well-known intellectual. Your values in terms of what you'd like to see the education system become, were they shaped by your parents?
Actually, because my father actually is a big supporter of multiracial education, culture and integration. So even though he is the leader of ABIM and people seen him as ustaz and maybe some said very conservative, but I think his ideas on multiracial, on how we can build a better Malaysia with the strength of being one nation is very important. So that's why when I took over this ministry, I think one of the biggest challenge and biggest focus that we are going to see is how we can work as one nation. And the issue of unity, we have to settle it, because one of our focus in our Malaysian educational blueprint is unity. So yes, my father did shape that background for me to work hard on how we can progress as one nation.
We talk about education a lot across the station, often on this show, and the general consensus that we get from listeners is that our education system is in a state of crisis. Would you agree with that?
You see, I would say that we have so many challenges, but at the meantime, we also have to celebrate our small success. We have so many success story in education. So do not focus on the crisis, but yes, we need to improve our quality of education. That's why we have this Malaysia blueprint, Malaysia education blueprint that actually focus on 5 areas that we actually can do better. That would be on access, equality, unity, and also efficiency. Yeah. So these 5 areas we can improve a lot. So every year we will actually publish the annual report on our progress, and we've seen after so many years there's so much progress and then potential and progressive development in our education system. So for example, the access to education, the enrollment of our students, especially in primary schools, I think that would be the best enrollment as we serve the universal standard. So we have a bit improvement to pursue, especially in secondary schools and our preschools. One thing for sure, we already have this compulsory education for primary school, but we don't have any compulsory education policy for primary, for secondary and preschool. So we are working on that. So recently we are looking for the policy for secondary education to make it compulsory for all students, especially in secondary school, to at least to be in school until 18 for SPM. So this is where we can actually address the issue of keciciran, all this, and also how we actually can increase our students in preschool, because the intervention in preschool is very important as well. So we do our intervention, especially for literacy in preschools and for special needs children. So that would be the entry point for all these issues that we are dealing, especially when we talk about literacy and numeracy poverty or learning poverty.
So is that for you the single most pressing issue, something that you're setting for yourself as a priority going into this next year or the next 4 years? Because people would like to know, because it's a huge problem. You have lots of legacy issues.
Yes.
What is your focus going to be?
Fantastic. I really love to engage and share with everyone that the direction of the Ministry of Education is actually also the direction of the nation. Yeah, this is very important because our Yang Berhormat Prime Minister has mentioned several times that the direction of the country is going to be STEM, TVET, and also English. Yeah. And these are the main, I think, drive for the nation. If you want to see for the next 4 years, 3 years, 2 years, that Malaysia is going to be somewhere in the progressive nation. So it will start with education. So yes, our main focus now would be STEM, TVET, English, and the quality of education. So yeah, we're on the right track so far, and we are heading to the direction of the nation.
Let's talk about the allocation of budget, because it's 58.7 billion ringgit. And I'd like to talk in general about the allocation, but also the specifics, because in an academic article from 2022, it was stated that the government spending on education is high, very high compared to the region. But it did also point out that the amount of money granted to each school is determined by the number of students enrolled in the current school year and not necessarily by the school's needs or the socio-economic status of the students. And they went on to argue that this creates inequality between urban and rural schools. Is this how it works? Could you talk to us about that?
You see, being the, I think being in the Billions Air Club, the Minister of Education always have the biggest budget, but it's not that easy. I mean, when it comes to the budget, it comes with a big responsibility as well. So one thing you have to understand, and we want to make people understand that 80% of the budget goes to the emolument, meaning that the salaries and benefits of education, including for teachers, administrators, and our support staff. And the 20% will go to the non-emoluments, meaning for the maintenance and all that. So yeah, the 20% part is quite challenging when it comes to distribution to the schools for the maintenance. And I mean, last year we have to focus on the sekolah daif and then the toilets as well. So yeah, it's actually based on application from the school as well. We have this system, so the school have to go in the system, and we have to manage. We have 10,000 schools, so yeah, it's quite challenging for us, but we manage to settle the issues with the I think commitment from every single unit of in the ministry. So I think under the 2024 budget, we also have this new schools projection that would be 26 new schools coming in. So this is the interesting part of the budget. For previously, when we asked or we applied for new schools, let's say we asked for 11 schools, new schools. So they only approve maybe 8 or 5, but this time around we got 26 schools in full. So this is one of the biggest challenge for us, especially to develop and build a new schools. 26 of them is not, I mean, it's 26, man.
Is it well distributed across the country?
Yes. It's all over the country. Don't worry.
I ask this because, okay, let's just put a question that I think everybody who looks at government and money will ask this. The problem of leakages, right? The question is whether the money is going to be well spent. Is that something that you as a minister, you've encountered, that you need to deal with, the kind of ecosystem within the education system, world that has created opportunities for some people to take advantage?
Yeah.
Are you able to address those questions?
Yes, I think I have to take care of everything about the schools, from building, from the design. I mean, I have to look everything, Sharit. There's no excuse or there's no room for any mismanagement. Especially when our Prime Minister always talk about the good governance. So this is the part that I'm still looking on how actually we can effectively address this issue. But I'll give you, this should be also one of the focus when we talk about the management of the project. That's why I'm really concerned about how when we deal about this toilet project, the sekolah daif as well. So we have our mechanism how to scrutinize everything. So yes, it's very important. We are going to focus on that as well, especially when it comes to building these 26 new schools. It's a very big challenge for us. How are we going to manage everything? 26 schools, a big project, but we have to make it.
I want to go back to that point about the workforce and teachers, because that's such an important component in the conversation.
Yes.
And a UNICEF study in 2019 pointed out that 93% of applicants for a Bachelor of Education and 70% of the people offered a place in the program did not have necessary qualifications. Does this remain true today? Are there plans to revamp our recruitment policies and training, especially once teachers are already in the system?
Okay, Lynn. This is a very important part of being a teacher. This is not something that you can simply say that I want to be a teacher. that doesn't end that way, because number one, okay, that's will be your ambition. Number two, you have to go through this qualification to be a teacher. That's why also we focus on we call it Standard Guru Malaysia. We have this. So we work with SPP, Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Pendidikan. That would be the entry point for everyone who want to be a teacher to qualify themselves during the interview with SPP before the Minister of Education take them as teachers. So there are so many issues to be settled before they become a teacher. So number one, we call the pre-service training. So before they become the teacher, before they become a teacher, so they will have to go some training, pre-service, in-service training during the training as teachers, and then career progression and support. They have to go through that as well, because we are looking into some issues as well. Number one is the mental health of the teachers. So we have to take care of them, and the well-being of the teachers is always that will be our utmost. We want to have a very healthy ecosystem, and to have the joy of learning, the joy of teaching in our class. So we have to take care of their mental health as well. Number two, I think on the what we call before the burden for the teachers, with all this digitalization, with all this curriculum, with all this how they manage
work.
Yes, and how they manage expectation from the public when it comes to education. Sometimes, the expectation from the stakeholders are very high for the teachers. So yes, we need to address every single thing. The early retirement as well, and the shortage of teachers. I think we are looking progressively, and we work closely with SPP, Suruhanjaya Perkhidmatan Pendidikan, to ensure that all these issues are well addressed.
So, Ministry of Education is often a lightning rod when issues like the PISA scores come out. And I know you've addressed this before, but I want you to address it again for us and help clarify for our listeners what's going on. The PISA scores, obviously, are from a time that you weren't, in fact, the minister. But what has the ministry identified from what has happened, and how are you going to rectify the problem in the coming years?
Yes, thank you. I think, number one, we have to actually acknowledge what are the issues behind the PISA's result. And I think one of the main concern is regarding the effect of the pandemic. That would be the general issues for every countries. So Malaysia also, we face the same issues, but the difference between Malaysia and other countries is how the government react to that pandemic issues. Number one, the closure of the schools. I think we had quite long closure of schools. That definitely, give impact to our children. Number two is how the government initiative, especially on the devices and the internet connection, to ensure all the children have connection or access to the education. So we actually our teachers, I have to thank them. During this pandemic, they actually did their best to ensure all the children have access to the education, but the initiative was not enough during that time, especially with the closure of the schools and the devices issues, and also the internet issues, connectivity issues. So do we actually wait for the PISA result to react? No, definitely no, Sharit. So once the pandemic, not to say ended, but once we went through that, we actually progressively did our own program to address the issue. Number one, we strengthen our module, especially on numeracy and literacy. Number 2, we launched the digital education policy, because this is the next, focus that we need to address after the pandemic. Number 3, we did our local projection and our local effort with all PPD, Pejabat Pendidikan Daerah, and our JPN, Jabatan Pendidikan Negeri, to address every state's level issues on this poverty or learning loss. We have to track them, the children, and I think, Alhamdulillah, some states are already, they are really doing good progress on that. So our mission is to ensure the next preparation for PISA is really in line and on track with the direction of the nation. So PISA, as we know, it's going to be STEM and English and reading and all that. So we have to do that preparation for the next PISA. So I think we're on the right track because the trajectory on 2018 was actually good. We had a good result before. So because of the pandemic, as we've seen the result, but the next PISA would be a very good avenue for our students, especially with the direction of the nation.
So we've been talking a lot about priorities, understandably, because there's so much to cover, but you've also talked a lot about leaving no child behind and that the ministry champions humane education. Can you talk to us about what this encompasses and how prevalent the issue is in our country?
My youngest daughter, Lynn, always been my inspiration. She always told me this. Mommy, she said, if you have a good heart, you will do the right thing. And Mommy, you are a good person, you have a good heart, and you will do everything right in this ministry. So she's always been my biggest fan and my biggest motivation every time. Every morning, especially.
How old is she?
She's only 6, Sharon.
Okay.
And she said to me this: the heart of the education is the education of the heart. Yeah. So when we talk about education, it's always the other side of education, despite the curriculum and all these potential, all these, the hardcore of the education, there always be this humane aspect of education. So she teach me a lot on how to be a humane aspect of education. And when we talk about no child left behind, we talk about access. Yeah, we want education to actually well received by the children and the community, and we really work hard on that. So that's why I think when we talk about humane education, we talk about making learning accessible to everyone. So we have these so many programs that we actually talk about how we deal with humane aspect. Yeah. For example, is the school in hospitals. We have 17 schools in hospitals. We have also schools in prison or sekolah integrity, we call it, Henry Gurney schools, meaning we want our children in that place as well to have access to education. We have K9 and K11, especially addressed for orang asli. And then the famous SBJK, Sekolah Bimbingan Jalan Kasih, to address the issue of undocumented and stateless child. So this humane aspect, must be translated well, and to ensure and to give some recognition to the work that we spend a lot on how we actually to ensure that our children get their education properly, and especially in some areas with some demographic challenges, poverty issues, and probably the issues that we might not seen before. So this is where the humane aspect of education must come in, must tap in to resolve the issues. So no child left behind is very important to me. It's very personal to me, especially when we have seen our children in various potential. This is amazing. This is where education must tap in and polish the potential of our children.
So Minister, one of the things, of course, that we have in this country is quite a diversity within the education.
I love the diversity.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because there's always this question about the vernacular schools and its place in the larger education ecosystem. What do you see as the contributions of the vernacular schools?
I think number one, we have we have to really understand that the Education Act, Akta Pendidikan, recognize the vernacular school. So the Minister of Education is in the position to support the vernacular schools because of the Act. That's number one. So no question of it's not permissible, it's not legal, it's something that, actually divide us. There's no such thing. Because number two, the vernacular schools has been a luxury option for the parents as well. So they can send their children to Sekolah Kebangsaan and they have the luxury to do the option to send to the Chinese school, to the Tamil schools. And I've seen, the SJKC has been a big and popular option for the Malay parents because of the language and the facilities, for example. And I just came back from Batu Pahat, how the SJKT also has provided space for our Malay children to be in that school because of the community and because of the language as well. So there's no question on why we have to question the establishment of the vernacular schools. So I stand with the Education Act and I stand with the decision and the position that we have no problem with the vernacular schools. Okay? All right? You happy now?
I'm very happy. Thank you very much.
Are you satisfied, Sharad? Okay, so final minute. I just want to close off with this question. You've referenced being a parent. You're a parent of 6. Do your children express their opinion on what's happening at school? Is there a back channel of feedback happening to you as the minister?
Okay, Lynn, they are actually my internal audit, Lynn, because they are everywhere. My second daughter is in the LP program and STEM program. My third daughter is I got 4 daughters, Sharad.
Lucky you.
Yeah, I love girls. And one boy. And boy, I have big challenge for my boy. But they are everywhere. So they will be my internal audit and how they respond to every program that they they involve is very important. So one girl's in the LP, STEM, and my third girl just finished her 30 juzuk of Al-Quran Hafazan under the program of Tafiz in KPM, and all of them are in KPM schools. It's very important because the minister has to prove, has the obligation to prove that our schools are the best schools and our teachers are the best well-trained teachers. So I have to prove that. So they are all everywhere and they have to come to me, and I have my internal audit to check whether the program translated for them within the policy that the MOE has done, or actually and how they respond to that program. So it's very interesting actually, and very challenging as well, because I have to listen to their complaints and as well how to improve the program, not just for my children, but for all the children. So like what the African proverb always said, it takes a village to raise a child. So I need everyone to be on track, to work with me, and to monitor as well, and to improve our quality of education together.
Fadhlina, thank you so much for speaking with us
Thank
today.
you so much. I'll come back.
Excellent. You just heard Education Minister Fadhlina Sidek. And before we close off, actually, there was a song request. We don't often do this, but there was a song request. We do have the song. So, Minister, if I could ask you to set it up, why did you want Mariah Carey's Hero?
Yeah, because it's actually the translation of the journey of 1 year. So hero means a lot to me, the song itself, because there's the lyrics, actually very strong lyrics. When the hero comes along with the strength to carry on, and you cast your fears aside, and you know, alamak,
you can survive.
You can survive. And when you feel like hope is gone, look inside you and be strong, and you finally see the truth that a hero lies in you. So the hero lies in everybody, in you, Lynn, and you, Sharat. Everybody, the hero lies in you. So sometimes you need that ecosystem, the support team, but sometimes you really need to look into yourself, and you'll finally see the truth that the hero lies in you.
So we don't often play her on the station, but it was a request.
Thank you.
So here is Mariah Carey, Hero, BFM 89.9.
Thank you so much. Bye.
So today is a little bit of an unusual one because we had our guest in studio earlier, who is Education Minister Fadhlina Sidek. And now the second half is actually a sort of a survey in some senses, or a platform for you to let us know what you'd like the minister to know, because in essence we're asking you for your suggestions. What would you like to see the Education Ministry initiate? What would you like to see them prioritize? And we are collecting all of that. We're collating it. We are going to be sharing it with the ministry after the show. So now's the time, really. If you have suggestions, we want to know what they are. You can call 7733 2900, send us a voice note or WhatsApp 018 789 8899, and tweet us at BFM Radio. So just briefly, we have this from Madiha, who says, my suggestions: basic health management, first aid, CPR, AED use, nutrition, basic wound care, navigating the health system, i.e. when or when not to visit the emergency department. It's important as we move towards becoming an aging nation. Number 2, foundations of philosophy. Critical thinking starts with an open mind. And number 3, how to have a digital mindset in parallel with tech, coding and programming skills.
Very interesting suggestions, my dear. The first one obviously has to do with kind of life skills that any child should have. And the third, of course, is the fact that the government, as the minister explained, is interested in pushing STEM and also, along with TVET, I think, which will probably in the years to come really incorporate a lot of the digital innovations that we see. But the foundations of philosophy,
yes, I
like that.
I knew you'd like that, because I do too.
Yeah, 30 years ago, there have been discussions about incorporating philosophy, not as some sort of airy-fairy thing about what we should do, should not do, but really the critical thinking skills that are involved in the study of philosophy, right? So, and they have been done in many school systems around the world at a very young age.
I would love to see it done, particularly with local philosophy and local philosophers, and having that kind of perspective brought out. Let's start with this voice note that came in from Pomi.
Hi, I just listened to Dr. Fadhlina just now. Over and above everything else that can be done, please, please, please bring back more subjects in English. It's getting impossible to listen to people speak English, deliver news, write a letter. Every time I read something, whether it's on Facebook or anything, oh my God, all I see are those glaring errors. Please, we need to do something. Do tell her that.
Pomi, thank you for that. So I don't know if you said that you caught the interview. So she did mention that English is one of the main priorities, along with 3 other things. It was overall quality of education, STEM, TVET and English.
Indeed, right. So, and I think that might be, something that has been long kind of held as an important part, a return to the strengths that we had as a society in terms of our education system that marked maybe the advantages we had coming out of colonial rule, which was that because English is such a kind of global language, the Malaysian who was comfortable in English really could go very far. And so, this return to that idea of the pragmatism of the past and having that in the education system, I think is very important. Probably like you, because my mother was an English teacher, I too have a hard time with, the sort of general lack of care when it comes to English grammar that we see in the public sphere. But more importantly is, I think, access to knowledge. Because our translation efforts have been quite poor translating works from around the world, especially in English, into the national language, into Bahasa Malaysia, what somebody who doesn't have a facility with English happens is that they are cut off from all those possibilities, right? Their access to the world of knowledge. And so I think on that level alone, English is going to play such an important role. If we don't have, or if people who are triggered by this don't think that somehow the national language will suffer as a consequence of the promotion of English.
Yeah, so that's, I think, the thing that I wanted to pick up on, which is the importance of a single word. I'm sorry, you said a lot of good points in there, but I'm going to kind of isolate one, which was pragmatism, because the argument in favor of English, I'm not going to say, not in favor of English, but in favor of at least bringing back a certain quality of English to our education system. I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't come with a certain amount, sometimes of outright racism, sometimes with, all sorts of things built into it. But actually, the overwhelming sense that often comes through is just a desire for pragmatism, for Malaysians to be able to communicate in a broad way with a broader group of people in an international sense, to be relevant in that way. And I think if we hold on to the notion of being pragmatic, that could hopefully see us go a long way.
Can I just have one thing that what I think also worthy of note is that the minister talked about why Malay families, the parents are choosing Chinese schools. And she said the language, and obviously it's not English, it's Mandarin. And so you see in a segment of the population a recognition of the value of different languages. So it's not just English as a language that we can return to, but also Mandarin is a language that's here with the community that other communities can leverage on
economically in future. I mean, there are all these things that are factored in. Other folks are saying, Do says, firstly, child safety. Secondly, sex ed. Third, more teaching staff and amenities for rural areas. And finally, the option of the IGCSE syllabus in the national school.
Yeah, in fact, when we had a discussion after the interview, the minister did talk about child safety. It's something that's very dear to her. It's very important that schools protect children, not their reputations. I think this is something that she feels strongly about, and she's going to be working with the other relevant ministries to push along. She didn't mention sex education. We didn't get to that. But, the question of teaching staff and amenities, I think in rural schools, and then in general, the question of recruiting talent into the ministry, because at the end of the day, you can have a great syllabus and you can have great ambitions, but if the teachers are not there to deliver it, so how do you enable the teachers to do that? How do you get the best people in, and how do you get the people who are in up to scratch?
Well, Anon is making that point, saying make government teacher a job that is fairly compensated like doctors to attract excellent students.
Yeah, that's a difficult one,
It is.
Because at the end of the day, there are countries where the education system seems to have been a great success, and you see that they are bringing in PhDs into the school system at a primary level. So the focus on foundational education is so strong in those countries, and so instead of just having your high achievers go to the latter part of the schooling, the end part of the schooling, you put them at the very start. Is that something that can be done? We'll see.
Casey says, I have been in the private education sector for decades, and there are thousands of Institut Pendidikan Swasta, especially in preschool tuition sector. There seems to be a huge gap, though, between the on-ground issues and what the MOE plans. It's difficult to make our voices heard. Inconsistent practices among state and district educational department. Licensing application is a nightmare. It opens up for other government technical agencies to ask for under-table money or, so on and so forth for approval. poor online systems for license applications, curriculums that are not age appropriate, especially in primary education. The private sector and educators are more than willing to contribute to uplift education in the country, but there's no platform for us to be involved.
Yeah, Casey, there's so much there. I did, in kind of preparing for this interview, learn about the fact that the curriculum and syllabus in some instances is not in fact age appropriate. There seems to be a gap, right? It seems to be too high level, and that what happens is that kids are thwarted, and then education ceases to be something they want to participate in. So it actually, a syllabus that is kind of ahead of the child actually has a dampening effect on the child's ability to perform.
What I find interesting, well, again, I've never worked in government. I've always been a member of the private sector, such as it were. But I'm so struck by the sheer scale of the education ministry, because of the different levels and schools and teaching facilities and people involved that need to be accommodated. And I think, Casey, I understand what you're saying in terms of where is an avenue for us to be heard, what makes sense for us to do. And I don't have an answer. Again, we'll pass it on to the minister. She didn't have time to take this earlier, but I think that it's so striking, the sheer amount of balls that require juggling, because it's so many different stakeholders.
Yeah, so and hopefully she seems to have just the personality for it to listen and to have a large stakeholder type of conversation, because we do have the government schools, we do have the private schools, we do have the vernacular schools, we have the toughest schools, and then like as Casey noted, there are all these other private institutions. There's homeschooling in Malaysia that's become quite a big thing among some segments of society. So how do you make it all work, right? Unless we get into a situation where we all become siloed and nobody's going to benefit from that.
Okay, I think this one is quite interesting. Okay, no, actually, you know what? Let's do the harder stuff first, because Anon says, discontinue Form 6 STPM and replace it with matriculation for all schools. Norman also says, I would like to suggest, because STPM Form 6 is already modular and system-based, why not streamline both matriculation and Form 6 into a single system where students sit for the STPM. So actually, I think this is the reverse. Having an STPM certificate will allow students who cannot continue the undergrad program to begin work or to take up different pathways. Let's stop there. Norman's suggestion goes on, which we can get into after this.
Yeah, so the STPM thing is quite interesting, because we've had several conversations on the show about STPM versus matriculation. Matriculation seemed to be an easier route into local universities, at least the public universities. And that seems to be riddled with all kinds of controversies around quotas and stuff. But the important thing here, I think, for everybody to kind of like focus on is quality. Because what we did learn, I think, in a previous interview that we did, was that, in fact, doing your A-levels is a foot into the world, right? It is a recognized certificate. The grades are something you can take to other universities around the world. Matriculation, not so, I believe. And so the question is, do we push the system down towards something easier and universal, or do we still maintain that we need education checkpoints that are tough enough to get our kids globalized, and they become
challenged.
Challenged
in a way that makes sense.
But also get into foreign universities. And so, if you go with your matriculation certificate, will it be recognized?
So we have Norman going on to say, as for Rancangan Makanan Tambahan or supplemental food program, we can't continue with just $2.50 a day for students in West Malaysia and 3 in East Malaysia. Since 2019, we're still seeing 1 in 5 children at risk of malnutrition or stunting. The free breakfast program or school meals is the way to go, like schools in South Korea, Japan and Taiwan.
Well, that's very interesting, because, we're now making schools and education in general a locus for all kinds of social engineering and all kinds of compensations, right? So if you're not getting your nutritional needs, is the school the right place to address that?
Well, I think it depends on, because I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with calling schools a locus for social engineering. I see where you're coming from. I think that it can come off a little bit cynical because the other way of looking at the supplementary food program is just that it's a leveler.
Yes, I that much agree, and I think that's what the breakfast programs often do. They're not supposed to take care of everything, but
yes,
they're supposed to be there to help the kid who's not getting enough going into school to get enough and maybe compensate for what is lacking back home.
Yeah, so I think of it more as just sort of leveling the playing field so that you start, if nothing else, you start the school day maybe having very different privileges, maybe having very different home lives, whatever it may be, but everybody's fed. And, if you start from that point, at least it's not nothing, In fact, I think it's quite meaningful.
Yeah, it could be. I think what would be really good to see is how these things operate. And it goes back to the question earlier about the difference between MOE's aspirations and realities on the ground, right? I think it was Casey who wrote it to say that. And so, again, we need to know how these programs pan out. And we need evidence to drive either the tweaking of these systems or junking them for some other form of intervention.
Norman had several suggestions, so we're just going to close off with this saying, several countries like the US allows charter schools, publicly funded, independently run. We have similar systems too, missionary schools, vernacular schools, where school board, alumni, PTA and school management work together to run it. Our education is too centralized at the federal level, and a good test bed is to see how Sarawak State takes hold of running education policies independently or semi-independently.
Yeah, that's a question we never got to with the minister.
We had it in the list and then we didn't manage to get to it, basically.
I do wonder, though, about charter schools, and I don't know the US system well enough, Lynn, to kind of weigh in this. But what I do understand, what is problematic sometimes is that if you run schools down by withdrawing or withholding public funding, and charter schools are the kind of savior, the white knight that comes in and saves these schools, then you might in fact be setting up an incentive structure where government increasingly defunds schools or defunds certain types of schools.
Which is always the concern, right?
Yeah, and then the question is, which communities are going to best leverage on a charter school and which communities are not going to be able to do that? And then we have the makings of greater inequality in the education system, not more justice.
We have Madiha, who is back to say, by the way, as a Malay parent, my kids go to an SJKC, but this is because there are no other public schools within a reasonable radius. It's either that or one of the 4 private schools that are in the area. Please make public schools better distributed in growing townships instead of pandering to private capital and whoever has the deepest pockets.
Yeah, Madiha, this is a fascinating dilemma. I don't know how the ministry itself can address this. The minister did speak about 26 new schools approved and what they hope to do with those 26 schools. But we have 10,000 schools around the country, 10,000 for a population of just over 32 million, 33 million, something like that. Is that optimal? I don't know. But, it's something certainly we'll need an expert to address.
We have Go, who says, consider a different syllabus for urban and rural areas as other countries are surging ahead with maths and science and English while we are accommodating rural areas. The catch-up can happen simultaneously, not neglecting people who live in rural areas. The good students are welcome. While we're at it, consider coding classes at school as well.
Yeah, Go, it's fascinating because English is one thing, I think, and then maths and science are others. And in fact, there are mother tongue language, champions who will say that a child learns maths best in their native language. So it's not about saying, so I wouldn't personally mix the two up, right? So English is one thing and facility in that language is something anybody would gain, as learning more languages is always a net gain.
I think actually what I'm concerned about here is that I think throughout our conversation in this latter half of the show, you and I, Sharad, have consistently said that there are worries about creating greater avenues of inequality in a search for excellence. And I see what you're saying with this, that there needs to be some sort of accommodation made so that so that the top don't need to wait, right, for people to catch up. And I understand that impatience, but I really do worry that in so doing, the gaps that are already there, the fissures, some might say, will just continue to widen.
In fact, I think it's already happened, because what are the private schools? I mean, I think of, friends of mine who are in the middle class, who are spending 20,000 upwards a year per child at primary school level. It's an extraordinary amount. And the reason they do that is to give their children an advantage. I mean, one thing that can be said about all Malaysians is that we do value education. And that's why I think leading a ministry like the education ministry is always going to be fraught because people are so invested in it.
To close, we have Anon who says, I will send over my long thoughts later. We will wait, Anon. But goes on to say, but an important quick suggestion would be to focus on the love for learning instead of packing as much knowledge and skills in the syllabus, especially at primary school level. Keep the young ones curious and interested to learn. And I just really like that as a suggestion, as someone who has always loved to learn, but did sometimes feel like school was not the place for it. I just love that. Okay, that is it. Keep those thoughts coming. We will continue to collect them for the rest of this evening and send them over to the Ministry of Education. You've been listening to Inside Story, BFM 89.9.